it's figuring out what am I best at? Where do I add the value to my business? For me, it's not about the day-to-day running of it because one, I'm not very good at it. And two, as I've already said, I'm so impatient. I'm on to the next thing before I've really finished this first thing. So it's figuring out what we're really good at. Where do we add the value? And then spending time on that and becoming really, really great at that. I wish I'd known that sooner because I was literally spinning so many plates. I ended up in hospital twice over my last 16 years of running the businesses. But now I feel like I've got a way better balance. And that means I can take some time to travel. I can spend it with my friends and family. And still the business is growing.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Neil Cameron, founder of Sportworks. Sometimes companies experience meteoric rises very quickly and end in a flourish with a multi-million-dollar exit. Other times, in fact, most times, the journey is much longer and the path winds much more unpredictably. Such is the story with Neil's first startup. He bootstrapped that company into existence, learned many lessons the hard way, and fought his way towards profitability, growth, and ultimately to sustainability. The business has been running for 16 years now and has made a genuine impact in the world. My conversation with Neil was just so refreshing to me. He doesn't brag about huge salaries, he doesn't give unrealistic advice or tell stories that are impossible to relate to. He shares his experience and perspective in a really down-to-earth, really digestible way. I always appreciate that. No matter where you are at in your startup journey, this episode has a ton of great insight for you to learn from. We start our conversation on the beaches of Australia, where Neil found himself drafting his very first business plan. No funding, no experience, but the early seeds of a dream that eventually he'd find his way back to.
So it started 16 years ago. Long story short is that I was a failed track and field athlete from college, from university in Cardiff in the UK. And I was adamant I was going to make it as an athlete, make it up to the
What
dizzy
event
heights.
did you run?
I was a long jumper, actually. I wasn't quick enough just to be a full sprinter, but I was pretty powerful. So my jumping thing was there. And without boring you with all the details of my injuries, my body couldn't hack it anymore. Mm-hmm. So after college, I was like, shit, what am I going to do with my life? Mm-hmm. So I took some time out to travel. And I was in Australia, actually, and I had a bit of a light bulb moment, which is I wanted to run my own business, wanted to do my own thing. And so there and then on a beach in Australia, I started writing a business plan. And it was in the sector that I know, which is sport. That's what I studied. That's what I was doing, kind of coaching. And so that's where it came from, really, was that desire to kind of reinvent myself after realizing that my track and field career was not going to be the one. Mm-hmm. What do I do with my life? And there was something just hit me out of the blue. It was a light bulb moment is how I best describe it.
And so, I mean, that even that moment of, okay, what's next for me? Most people go, all right, what do I know? What are my skill sets? I'm going to go get a job. But you said, I'm going to write a business plan. I mean, that's just a different approach. How did you grow up around entrepreneurship? How'd you have the confidence and just the gumption to say, instead of going and joining a company, I'm going to start my own?
Well, I should probably, before I answer that one, I should probably say I didn't. I went back to the UK and my mother talked me out of it, actually. She was like, go and get a job. She said, you don't have any experience of running a business. You've never done it before. All the things you've just said to me. Right. I was like, that's okay. I can work it out. I can figure it out. She's like, go and get a job. Uh-huh. And if you still want to run your own business in a couple of years, go for it with a bit of experience under your belt. And I took her advice. In hindsight, actually, I don't know whether it was good advice. I think sometimes going into it in the deep end is maybe not a bad thing, but I took her advice and I came back to the UK after my travels, after college, and I was in a job for 18 months and I hated it, in all honesty. And all the time, there was that little scratch, little itch.
Totally.
And I was like, do you want that business plan that I wrote back in Australia? It's still there. It's still kind of calling me. And so I guess to answer your question, I didn't have that confidence. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that gumption just to think, screw it, let's do it anyway. I took
Mm-hmm.
the normal route, but there was something that didn't align with me, didn't sit with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, there was an opportunity. My role was made redundant, and I was like, this is maybe my time. This is my opportunity. So at that stage, I was like, I'm ever going to do it. Now's my time. So that's when I
Mm-hmm.
took redundancy, had a tiny little payout. I think I had about 5K. This is pounds. So this is what,
Mm-hmm.
7,000 US in today's money. And I started it from there.
Awesome. Awesome. So when you decided to move forward with that and jump into the deep end, do your own thing, did you do that on your own, Neil, or did you do that with the co-founder, and why'd you make that choice?
It was on my own. In fact, everything I've done, Brandon's been on my own.
Okay.
I think my next venture, I'm going to change that up. I'm going to do something with a co-founder. But yeah, to answer the question, my first business 16 years ago was just myself. And why? I guess the honest answer is that I didn't have anybody else lined up to work with me. It was one of those where I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I knew the sector that I was going to go into. I knew the market, and I was like, screw it. Let's just go head first into it. I think with hindsight, knowing what I know now, I probably should have brought somebody with me for the ride. I think it would have been more enjoyable, and the highs would have been more enjoyable, and the lows would have been less less terrifying, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right? I was completely in charge of my own destiny. I didn't have anybody else to pacify or to keep aligned with. So I can see that there's both pros and cons to it. But yeah, all my ventures to date have been on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely, sometimes it's the right fit for some businesses. Others it's not. And yeah, just depends on all things. Yeah, consider who you have around you in your network. If there's anybody that's even the right fit, that's co-founding is a whole thing. It's a whole area. And but you talk to 10 entrepreneurs and 9 are going to tell you, try to find a co-founder, for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I'm starting both businesses I have. Well, the first one I started is on my own. The second one I do have a co-founder, but it's more on the side. And I've seen both sides of it, the pros and cons, and yeah, for sure. Now, as you were getting started as a founder and you decided to go that route, it's so interesting because you went the more traditional route and you went and got a job, but there was that itch always just at you, like, well, I did write that business plan, and what if I just did this thing on my own? So you kind of paint the grass as greener. You think, oh, this is going to be so great. Like, this is not great. I'm going to go make it great, do my own thing. When you went and made that jump, what about becoming an entrepreneur, starting your own company was as you expected it? And what wasn't? What surprises lie in wait for you?
A great question. I think one of the main surprises at the time was just how high, so how many highs and how many lows you could get in a 24-hour period. The emotional roller coaster is intense, particularly when you're still finding your feet and you try to figure out, can I do this? How do I do this? And understanding your own journey as an entrepreneur, never mind just running the business. So I think the answer to the question is just how much volatility there is. And, when a contract
Yeah.
goes well, you're over the moon. It feels so
Mm-hmm.
great. It feels so exciting. It's like, oh my God, I've got
Mm-hmm.
this. And then something bad happens. And
Mm-hmm.
it's literally like your heart sinks because you put
Yeah.
so much time and soul and sweat and tears into it. And so I think that roller coaster of emotions is probably one of the main things that I didn't see coming.
Yeah.
I knew it would be hard work. I'm not afraid of hard work, but I just think that it was the unpredictability of it which hit me hard. And actually, I remember very clearly there was a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was having a really tough few weeks. This is maybe a year, 18 months after starting, and they gave me some great advice, which was, if you're high when the business is going high and you're low when the business is not going low, you're going to spend your whole life with these peaks and troughs. You've got to find like a middle ground. So, you can still feel happy and excited, but don't feel quite so down when the business is struggling. And I think that was a really good way of managing that situation.
Yeah, I think that is so hard. It's sound advice and so hard to do. You live and breathe this thing, especially early on when you're wearing every hat and you're, playing every role and you're trying to get this thing off the ground and it feels like your baby. It's really, really hard to do that, but very sound advice to be more even keeled in your own emotions so that the business doesn't drag you up and drag you down. How did you fund that first business? Did you just bootstrap it? Did you take a family loan? Did you go get professional money? How'd you do that?
Complete bootstrap. So yeah, I had about 5,000 UK pounds
Yep.
in the bank, which is not a lot of money in today's money, never mind 16 years ago. And yeah, I just worked my ass off, quite honestly. I really bootstrapped it. It was just myself in my back bedroom. So I had zero cost effectively. And I built it from just sweat, as in, putting my time into it, selling my own hours. So this is my sports business, Sportworks. So I was the product, as it were. I was the one I was selling as a sports coach, as a tutor on an hourly rate. So my overheads were pretty much zero. So yeah, I didn't really need a huge capital injection. I've taken funding finance later on, and with my other business ventures, I've done that. But the first one, yeah, it was just purely me and sweating the clock.
Yeah, for sure. So you bootstrapped the first one, you decided to go a different route with some of the others. Tell me why that choice. Why did you decide that for your others that the right fit was to actually raise?
So after, let's call it 7 or 8 years of running Sportworks, I was a little bit bored. I needed a different injection of energy and excitement. And that wasn't to say that I was done with Sportworks. Absolutely not. It's still running, living, breathing business now. But I realized that I was ready for a different dynamic in my working life. And I fell into property development or real estate development. And in that model, you have to raise quite a lot of money, and it's taking a mortgage, quite simply. So it was I suppose, quite a simple route in some ways into raising finance, as in it was buying a property, taking a mortgage on it, and going down that typical route. So that was kind of my first learning, really, about raising finance and doing it that way. And I guess in some ways, doing it in real estate was quite a structured way and quite an easy way of doing that. I know people who are, founding tech companies and they're raising finance, and that for me would be a very scary thing to do as a first-time entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I think, property development is probably a safer step into that route for me.
Great. So let's talk about, we can either do Sportworks or anything else you've done later on that you feel this question's more applicable for. But as you are beginning to build your business, how did you identify your customer segments early on? How'd you go find the people that needed the solution that you were offering?
It's a great question, and it's one I've given a lot of thought to, actually. I think my best answer and my best advice to people listening is to get really close to the customer or potential customer. Just spend some time with them. Take them out for dinner, take them for lunch, take them for a coffee, and just understand really deeply what's going on for you. If you had this as a service or this as a product, would you pay for it? And why would you pay for it? And why are you not doing it right now? Or if you are doing it right now, how is it working for you? Is it good? Is it bad? Are you getting value for money? So I guess you'd call that market research, but I'm talking about being really close to people. And with my first venture, Sportworks, I had built a network of potential customers. That's why I launched that business. I was like, I've got 4 or 5 people I can speak to straight away. And I actually secured those contracts before I started it. So I was still doing some work on my kind of last few weeks of my job before I left, and I'd secured these pieces of work. So I knew that when I did take that step, I had some contracts in place. It's pretty small stuff. I'm talking about, a few £100 every week. So it wasn't mega money at all. But by doing that and by listening and really listening about what's useful for you, that gave me the opportunity to kind of just shape my offer. And then ultimately to repeat it. If they were buying it, then I knew that other people in their same positions would buy it in different companies.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not even necessarily at that point. Of course, money matters and the amount matters, but it's not even so much about the amount, but that you are getting cash in the door. People value what you're offering, and that's super validating and can be really motivating early on, I know.
It's a thrill. It's a real buzz, actually, I have to say. Those first few contracts, I probably got more joy from them, then
Totally.
I'd get something now, 16 years on,
Yep.
which is a strange thing to say because the values now
Yeah.
are higher. But
Yeah.
actually, that first one for £500 or £800, I remember
Totally.
punching the roof of my car when I found
Yeah.
out I
That's
got one. And
awesome.
there was a huge dent in the car.
That's
And I was like, I've
amazing.
done it. I've made it. And now you can get, six-figure contracts. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Right, great.
Yeah.
How do we,
Right.
it's not
Right.
quite the same impact.
No, but it's the human element. It's the validation of I can do this, and like you've had that this many years on, but to get that initially, I think probably any entrepreneur who's done that as a career path has that moment, that first moment of like, oh my gosh, this is real, and I can do this, and that's powerful.
Just to kind of add to that, I think you used that word, momentum. It gave me real confidence, a real momentum to say I can do this. And actually, I used those 4 or 5 contacts that I had, and I kept on going. I said, okay, how do I get that to 8 contacts? How do I get that to 15 contacts? And literally, that's how I built the business, by taking that feedback, the listening, and having the same conversation with somebody doing a very similar role, just in a different area. And so it was a pretty simple rinse and repeat model, I guess. And that's how I got the business off the ground. That's how it got some momentum. And then the first break that we got was a much bigger contract, like a local government contract. They came to me and said, hey, we've heard about the work that you're doing. Could you do the same thing this is for disabled children, actually. I was like, well, never done it before, but why not? And that turned into what was about, I think, a £50,000 a year contract, which was that about 70 US. And compared to kind of £500 a week, it was a big step. And so that was, again, hugely validating for me in terms of those conversations I had. That gave me that foundation to think, okay, I can do this, and I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that actually answered kind of my next question of how were you even then you were growing from there. You felt like you found some product market fit. You got some customers early on, but it sounds like you were truly listening so that you would offer true, genuine value, and then word of mouth referrals. People saying Neil's doing this for me, he can do it for you, and then eventually getting to more of almost like a B2B contract and having the government say, "Would you do this for us?" So referral early on, it sounds like.
Yeah, correct. And I guess the niche that I found, and again, the other bit of advice or reflection that I have is that it's pretty niche. This 50K a year contract that they offered, it was working with disabled children in a certain geographical area in the northeast of England. Pretty niche stuff. You're not talking about,
Right.
building Teslas or taking a rocket to Mars. This is pretty
Sure.
niche stuff. But what I figured out is that if they needed it in that one area, they needed
Yeah.
it in another area. And in fact, it was every area of the UK that they needed it in. So that rinse and repeat model, that's how I started to scale it.
Cool.
And what happened from that is that I realized from that one contract, I couldn't do it on my own, because to that point, it was me. I was CEO and I was also chief janitor. I was doing everything as we do when you get a business off the ground. But that one contract changed things, because I needed initially 5 people to work as coaches and as tutors to be able to deliver this product or this contract. And that's what changed the game for me and enabled me to scale it, because I realized my margin was good enough that I didn't need to be there. I didn't need to be the guy with a tracksuit every single day, because the other 5 people could do that. And there was still enough margin for me to take a decent wage. Don't get me wrong. It was not as great as it would have been, but it meant that I didn't have to work those crazy hours that I was working, 100 plus hours a week, and I could still make some money out of it. And so that was the bit of the shift for me, having those contracts, which meant that I had a team, could build a team. And that was probably, I think, 18 months after starting.
Oh, awesome. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you're going exactly where I was going to lead you with those questions, which is just a really natural evolution of you're growing, you start getting more you're going to have to start having more, finding more people. And that's I like, this is an important moment that I really like to focus on in when I talk to entrepreneurs of, okay, you're growing, you gotta have more people. If you can be short-sighted, you can work 100-hour weeks, you can try to bust it out on your own so you can take the entire margin for yourself, but you're never going to get past the amount that you can handle in a 100-hour work week, and let alone the human sustainability of a workload like that. And it's a scary moment. I mean, not only just giving away the margin you've worked so hard to like eke out enough to live on, But people are hard. People are complicated. People complicate things, and relationships are hard. And so, my next question for you really is around how you made sure you found the right people. Even if not every swing was a home run, how did you start to say, all right, these are the right people that fit the culture and ethos of the business and understand where it's headed? They understand the vision. How did you even go? What were you doing? Were you on the street corners shouting out? I mean, how did you find people? It's a huge issue for entrepreneurs early on.
And it's a huge issue even now, 16
Yeah,
years
sure.
on. In
Sure.
fact, I would say it's probably got more difficult.
I bet in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And I think that's not just a me thing. I don't think that's just a UK thing. I think globally, people are
Yeah.
finding recruitment more difficult. But to answer your question, I went to the university and I literally held an open day. And I said, look, anybody studying in sport and looking for part-time hours
Nice.
who has this qualification and this level of experience, come and talk to me. And I remember I sat in a room and there was about 8 or 9 people came along and it was super informal. I was like, guys, I'm looking for 5 people. This is the criteria. This is what I can offer you for pay. This is the kind of the minimum standards I need. But actually what I'm looking for is somebody who can work and be excited and be enthusiastic and work. This is a contract 100%. And this was a contract dealing with children with disabilities. So this wasn't about pinstripe suits and looking sharp. This was about humans and people who've got disadvantages, and that empathy and that care was there. It had to be there. So that's what I was looking for. Somebody I could relate to, somebody who, yes, ticked the boxes in terms of the paperwork and the qualifications, but somebody who gave a shit, quite honestly. And that sometimes what you see early on in an interview situation is not the reality, of course. So those 4 or 5 people I had initially, some of them lasted a couple of years and some of them lasted 5 minutes. But that's how I went about it, just going to the local university and being really humble and say, look, I need to build this and I want to build it with people who care.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a really keen insight early of like, here's what I need of you. Like these are the qualifications, and for some of those to be soft skills, so that you can be looking for those and know that they have the culture, that they fit the culture that you were setting for the company early. How did you weren't the only one out there with this solution, right? Saying like you can do what Sportworks is doing. How are you differentiating yourself early on from other people doing something similar?
Yeah, I mean, the context, and this is obviously going back a few years now, but this is pre the Olympics in London. So this is pre 2012 Olympics.
Okay.
So we're talking kind of 2010, 2011 at that stage. And so there was a lot of money being pumped into our sector. Everyone was talking about
interesting
Olympic legacy. And I was like, okay, well, the timing here is pretty good. But you're quite right. It wasn't just us coming out of it. I think the best answer I can give you is, again, that personal touch. It was about really getting to know the clients. And because I was starting from a pretty basic level, I didn't have huge offices. I didn't have 100 people working for me. It was me. I was the brand. And so to get this business off the ground, I wanted to spend time with these people. And it was that real personal touch that made a difference. And this sounds a little bit egotistical. I don't mean it in that way, but they were buying me as much as they were buying the product because they believed in me and what I was telling them. And I said, look, my name's on the shop here. Not literally, but metaphorically. If it goes wrong, you come to me. So I think that's how I did it initially. There were other people doing it, and there actually were other people doing it more cheaply. I never went out to be the cheapest. That was one of the things I said to myself from day one. I don't want to be the cheap guy here. I'd left a career that I was earning decent money in. All right. It wasn't my dream job, but I wasn't just going to give myself away for next to no money. But if I'm going to be charging a premium, I need to give them a really good service. And that, in my mind, was having access to me.
Yeah.
So I guess you'd say
that
in
that's cool.
Yeah, it works. And I guess in business sense, you'd say, you under promise and over deliver, right? So I think that's probably how I beat the competition in that way.
That's great. So you're growing. You've found some product market fit. You have some customers early on. This contract was a key and pivotal moment for you. What can you identify, Neil, as you continue to grow the business as like a really big bet that you had to take? Something really risky that you had to step out on the ledge and take a bet and take a risky move. Did it pay off? Did it not? What did you learn through that process?
Actually, it touches back to a point we talked about a couple of minutes ago. I brought in a managing director to run the business early on. And when I say early on, I'm talking about maybe 4 years into that.
Okay.
And we were still a small company, but I realized my skill set was not managing people day to day. By this point, we had maybe 30 people on the payroll.
Oh, wow.
So we'd grown, and I realized I was spending all my time putting out fires, dealing with people, dealing with personal issues. And I was like, this is driving me nuts. And I was working crazy hours. Actually ended up with me being in hospital for a point of time because I just completely burnt out.
Wow.
And so the answer to the question is that I appointed a managing director on a pretty big salary, relatively. And that was a huge gamble because, as you said before, that's money that should be in my pocket or could be in my pocket.
Yeah.
And it was a gamble because the first guy didn't work out. The second guy didn't work out. Actually, the third guy didn't work out, or lady didn't work out. It was not until the fourth time I got it right.
Wow.
And I'm so happy that I stuck with it, because what that did do is enable me to really focus on other things. That enabled me to get my other business off the ground, my real estate business. That enabled me to take on other projects. And actually, it enabled SportWorks to grow because I wasn't getting consumed with the day-to-day operational stuff, the low-level stuff, dealing with emails until 3:00 in the morning. It really enabled me to focus on bigger picture stuff. But it was a huge gamble. I remember at the time thinking, I can't justify this. This is like 60, 70,000 pound salary, which for a business that's doing 200,000,
right,
is a big percentage. So, that was a gamble, but I'm so glad I did it because I wouldn't be able to get to the point where I am now. I've just been traveling for a few months, and it's that same mentality where I've got somebody else running the day to day, so I can do my other bits, and that enables me to think and be more strategic. And that's the stuff that I'm good at. And I think in hindsight, where I add the most value to the business.
Yeah, and exactly that. And you had mentioned that earlier of like, not only is it important from personnel role, people in your company are getting better taken care of. But one key thing there, and an insight that I think you touched on, is that you're not, if it's not your gifting, then you're in the way. Like, right, you're in the way of your company's growth. If that's not where you thrive, if that's not what your gifting is, let alone how much time you have, if that's limited, if that's not your gifting to deal with people and to manage people, then then you're getting in the way of growth. And to put somebody in place who can do that better can result in more growth than you could have offered in that role. So that's a key insight. Yeah,
100%. I mean, looking back now, I thought I would be the best people manager. I thought I would love it. I come from a sports coaching background. So I was like, this is coaching people. It's nurturing talent. It's getting the best out of them. I am terrible at that. I realized that pretty quickly because I'm impatient. And if I know something, I expect them to know it. And I'm in a really, I wouldn't say a bad manager because I do genuinely care about people, but I don't have the patience to invest in that person. And that's what a manager needs to do. So what I realized is that for me to scale this business, and it's a people business, I'm the bottleneck here. I'm the issue because I don't have the skills to be able to deal with 30 people with 30 issues and get 30 great performances from them every day. That's not my skill set. So bringing in somebody who did have that mentality, that was such a game changer for me personally, because it meant I didn't have to work as crazy hours, but it was a game changer for the business, as I said before, because it meant that I could then focus my time on activities that would have a bigger impact.
Yep. And that you were specifically gifted in, that you could provide the most value for your time.
Right.
So as you're continuing to grow, one key thing with bringing in a key employee like that and letting them take the reins in that area is like, it's really tough to continue to, and one reason founders are often afraid to do that is it's tough to continue to foster the culture that you set out initially to have in your company, for that mission and vision that you're setting to be taken forward by someone who maybe is more in the day-to-day than you are and talking to the people that you're hiring. And how did you ensure that happened as you continue to grow? And then you were even stepping out of some of these day-to-day things. How do you ensure that the culture that you cared about instilling in your company continued?
With real difficulty is the honest answer, Brandon. And even to today, that's one of the toughest aspects of running a company because culture if it's not yourself driving it day to day, you're reliant on somebody else to think and act in a way which is in alignment with your values and beliefs. So I went through genuinely maybe 3.5 managing directors before I found the right one. And that cost a lot of money, a lot of time,
Yep.
a huge amount of frustration. And it's exactly to your question. They weren't the right fit. There was something, whether it was a technical skill, but more so it was a cultural misfit. They went about things in a way, or they treated people in a way that just didn't fit. And so the way I got around it eventually was I realized that bringing people externally, just hiring external people who come with more experience, a great CV, that wasn't the right thing. Actually, what was the better move was to promote people from within, the people who'd been in the business at a more junior level, but had that ambition and that aspiration to grow. That I found to be a far better tactic for promoting talent from within rather than bringing more expensive people from an external point of view. And that means that before promoting somebody, I already know them. I know what their values are. I know what their culture is. I know how they communicate with peers, and I know how they communicate with customers. And I think looking back, I should have done that sooner rather than trying to find that magical person who came with a great track record and expect them to fit into kind of this model that I'd created. No, that was, in hindsight, it was a stupid dream to think that would work. I think bringing somebody with you for a ride, learning each other, and then letting them progress and grow with the company, I think is a far better fit.
You keep going exactly where I want to go with this. Like my next question I want to go, you're already answering, which is awesome. We're just riding vibe that, talking about some practical things that some advice you'd give on hiring. And those are some great insights. This is kind of the section that I'd like to talk more about. Specific advice and practical takeaways that founders can use in their own journeys. And that's a wonderful one with hiring. Talking more about operating, day to day, your company, what is something that with any of your projects you've done, you found to be just a gospel truth, something that you found to be true over and over again and to have proven itself out as it relates to operating your company and running it?
Well, I'll start actually from a finance point of view, actually, and this might come a little bit left field, but one of the rules that I learned early on, and then I stopped following that advice, was to pay myself first. But to explain that, so from day one, I was the only guy in the payroll initially. So of course I was paying myself first because there was nobody else to pay. And then what I realized a few years later, I was prioritizing everybody else on the payroll other than myself. And then with a more recent project, it was a hotel I've just launched a couple of years ago. Everybody was getting paid before me. The bank was getting paid. The cleaning staff were getting paid. The window cleaners were getting paid. And what I realized is that I was getting really upset, really pissed off, really frustrated by the whole dynamic. I was like, what am I doing this for? I'm working harder than anybody else. This is my baby. And I remembered it a few months ago. It's like, it's because I'm not prioritizing myself. And that, again, sounds very egotistical and egocentric, but I think the point that I'm making and the kind of the gospel that I've learned from this is that unless we are functioning well as the entrepreneur, we're the engine, we're the life and soul of this business. And unless we are getting something out of it, whether that's finances, but also we need to be enjoying it. We need to feel that we're getting a reward. And if everybody else is getting that reward and we're not, that's going to backfire pretty quickly. So I think, to answer the question more succinctly, prioritize ourselves, because unless we put our oxygen masks on ourselves first, the whole business is starting to crumble underneath us. Now, starting off, some people are building a team. They need to make sure these people are paid, of course. But I think as an entrepreneur, after 12 months, 18 months, we need to be paying ourselves. We need to be prioritizing ourselves. We need to make sure we've got time on vacation to look after ourselves. Otherwise, the whole thing will fall under our feet.
Yeah, and I think that what people find out is that So yes, it's important. You're caring for your people and you're paying them and for their work, but that over time, it is more likely that your people will be cared for, that their paychecks will be paid if you are caring for yourself as the owner of the business. And I think that it's a tough lesson to learn, and often is learned too late, but is one that I've heard a lot of founders echo. And I think it's really sound advice. Let's kind of stay on the thread of scaling and growing, and you're bringing people on. There's been some great points there. What's a word of caution that you could offer to founders who are actively scaling their startup? Something that you may have learned the hard way.
Well, I'll use my hotel project as the example here, actually, Brandon,
Great.
because I built a small property portfolio. I have a number of real estate deals under my belt. And I was thinking, okay, what's next? What's the next bigger move here? And it was buy a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And that nearly put me under, actually, financially. It was a huge step forward, a huge step into a bigger deal structure, multiple seven figures. And I hadn't done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it nearly sent the business under. It really affected my health. Again, my stress levels were through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the advice then? What did I learn from that? I mean, it was, I suppose, taking big, bold steps is what we do as entrepreneurs. But this was a huge step. This was a huge move into a direction I didn't really have that much experience in. And I got it right, but it nearly killed me in the process. And I think the caution that I would give to people in that similar situation is to find the balancing point between being bold, being confident, backing ourselves, and being reckless. And I think in hindsight, I was probably on the reckless side in terms of thinking I could do this on my own. No co-founder, nobody with hotel experience, and nobody with experience of dealing with multiple seven-figure contracts. And thinking, okay, I can do this because I've done residential real estate in the past. That was just stupid and naive. So back ourselves, yeah. Believe in what we can do, yeah. But also, let's be realistic as well so we don't overextend, because that nearly sent everything under, including the sports business, including my other properties. That was nearly the end of it. So that's the advice I would give somebody and the caution I would give.
That's great. I love that. Let's move into a couple closing questions here, Neil. When you speak with other entrepreneurs and you have the opportunity to do that, what's a question that you find you get asked the most? And then what's a question that you find that they should be asking, but they aren't?
I love that. So I get asked a lot about hiring and how to build a team. Again, I use the example, I've just come back from 3 months traveling. And how can you do that? How can you run those
Right.
businesses from Philippines or in Indonesia? And I think, so I'm going to combine both your questions into one answer here, is that it's figuring out, what am I best at? Where do I add the value to my business? For me, it's not about the day-to-day running of it, because one, I'm not very good at it. And two, as I've already said, I'm so impatient. I'm on to the next thing before I've really finished this first thing. So it's figuring out what we're really good at. Where do we add the value? And then spending time on that and becoming really, really great at that. I wish I'd known that sooner, because I was literally spinning so many plates. I ended up in hospital twice over my last 16 years of running the businesses. But now I feel like I've got a way better balance. And that means I can take some time to travel. I can spend it with my friends and family, and still the business is growing. I think that's probably the main thing that the people coming into business ownership and entrepreneurship should be asking. What are the real skills that you have and that you enjoy having?
Yeah, I think that's great. And that second piece is so important. What are the skills that you have, and what are the skills that that when you exercise them bring you life, like that fill you up, right? Because some people are good at things but don't enjoy doing those things. And I think both of those are important to make sure that you can stick it out for the long haul. I think that's really good. Imagine you woke up at the start of your career. You somehow retain all the knowledge and experience that you have now from all of your knowledge and experience, but you're right there at the very beginning. How do you spend the first week of that fresh start?
It comes down to people. And who do I need around the table from day one that's going to enable me to scale this more quickly and more successfully without me burning out? And I think that only comes with a little bit of experience of really knowing yourself and knowing what we are good at and what we enjoy doing. I think we've got to go through the run a little bit, but bringing people around the table who've got that patience to deal with staff, who have got the skill set and expertise to go into the finances. It's building that team from day one. They don't necessarily have to be co-founders. They could be people you bring in on an hourly rate, or you go onto upwork.com and bring somebody in as a freelancer from the other side of the world at a cheaper rate. But I think really bringing that power team together from the first day would be the game changer.
That would be super powerful to be able to take the experience you have of those hires that didn't go well, and from day one, put a dream team in place would be, a really powerful thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
Lastly for you, what is one tool, quote, or book, anything that you found indispensable to your personal or professional progress over the years?
There's one I read within the first 12 months of starting the business, actually. It's called The E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. It's quite an old text now. I don't know if other people on your podcast have recommended this one, but for me, it talks to all the points, or a lot of the points that we've just been referring to the last few minutes. There's so many different aspects to running a business, and some of them, for somebody who's a solo entrepreneur working from a bedroom, they have to take all of those tasks. But actually, only that one person leads to failure. We have to have other people in the team. So this book really helped me to kind of put a framework together. Where do I sit in this mix? Who else do I need? When do I need to bring them in? And I think that's one of the books that I recommend to any business owner, just to conceptualize, where do I sit in this business? How should I be approaching recruitment? And that was a real game changer.
That's awesome. And I love how so many of your answers in the kind of the direction this interview's taken, I love how it just continues to come back to people. And I wonder if that's been, helpful for you to be introspective on, to be like, man, over the years, it really has come to who's been around the table, who's helped me get these businesses to the next level. And I think that that's a really keen insight, because that is so true. Is like, we can put the team on our back. We can be these power business owners and learn over the years how to do that well, but we can't do it all. Whether it's time in the day or expertise, experience, skill sets we have, and getting the right people around us is a key part of being successful in any business. So I think that's really applicable and relevant. Neil, I appreciate your time so much. This was really, really great. Thanks for sharing your insights with my audience. This was all really valuable. Thanks so much.
Brandon, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. You take care. Thank you. If you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it. Second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about the topic I covered, have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi. Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.